I made a 1/10,000 guess and was correct on the first try. Anyone else break the universe with super unlikely things? I was picking up lunch for my office. As opposed to looking for parking, I found a meter that was right in front. I never use meters if I can help it. Mostly because I don't have any change. So I park and run inside hoping this lunch pickup would take just a minute. This restaurant was notoriously speedy. Of course, they were running late this time. And of course, in the split second I turn my head, a bicycle cop finds my car and starts writing the ticket. I run outside and start weaving a tale about how I definitely put in money and I'm so surprised it ran out so quick and to please look the other just this once. The cop looks at me and the conversation goes as follows. Him, once I start writing I have to give the ticket. Me, come on. I definitely put in money and it ran out so quick. Him, well, did the meter fail? That's the only way I can tear up the ticket. Me, yes, it failed. That's what happened. Of course. Him, prove it. Figuring I had nothing to lose I said, sure. I had to run inside the restaurant to get change, cause I had none in the first place. I get a dime and run out to the waiting cop and say watch this. As soon as my dime goes into the meter, the screen flashes fail. There was absolutely nothing wrong with this meter before I put that dime in. I figured I lied so hard I changed the universe. The cop tore up the ticket. TLDR, I told a cop that a perfectly fine parking meter would fail, so he would tear up my ticket. When he asked me to prove it, I did and the meter failed. An unnamed man and I have ran into each other approximate 20 times in my life. I'm 23. I really don't know this guy, but I have ran into him at least 12 or so times I can specifically remember, and there's other times that I just can't pinpoint. The first time I remembered seeing him again was at Disneyland, when I was about 9. Since then, I have seen him in the most random places, like Disneyland another time, Niagara Falls, a camping spot somewhere in Nevada, when I was about 14, the LA County Zoo, and a racetrack in Colorado about 4 years ago. We both recognize each other, but never acknowledge. I will always remember seeing him in because we both gave each other a look of complete disbelief. I hope to one day see him again and see if he has taken note of all of our encounters like I have, and maybe get to know him. No homo, but with situations like these it seems more than the appropriate thing to do edit. Aside from running into him at random stores, another one was at a movie theater in Vegas. Don't remember which one exactly, but it's literally on the inside of a casino. And who knows, maybe we'll never see each other again until our last day, making a moment of eye contact, right before we collide head on in a car crash. Epic. I'm a little late to the game with this one, and it will probably get buried, but I want to post it anyways. My fiance and I grew up in different states. She was from Montana, and I was California, but we both ended up moving to Oregon and that's where we met. After dating for a year and a half or so we decided that we wanted to get married. No big rush or huge announcement or anything, just decided we were right for each other and wanted to make it official. She stuck with me through my first bout of cancer, and I knew then that she was the one for me. A couple of weeks after that we drove to Montana to visit her family. We had been on the lookout for a good engagement ring for her, but we didn't want anything fancy or expensive, and she wanted to help pick it out instead of me surprising her with one, which I was completely okay with. So on our way back home from Montana we stopped at a small restaurant/store combo, where they have a small selection of jewelry. It's a place called the $50,000 Silver Dollar Bar, and is actually pretty well known. It is exactly what it sounds like. 50,000 silver dollars line the walls of the building. It is right before/after, not sure which, a large pass that is hard to get through in the snow. Anyways we go in, and she finds a ring that she loves, and we get it for her. Later on in the trip on the way back we stopped at a waterfall in Oregon and I officially proposed to her with it. It was a good moment. Fast forward a half a year later, we are talking with my grandma telling her the story. Her jaw kind of drops a little and tells us that my great grandfather used to work as a tow truck driver, and when that bar opened he would go wait there and wait for people who needed to be towed when the weather was bad. Apparently he spent a lot of time there. This was when the bar first opened, and he was one of the first people to place a silver dollar on the walls. She said that if we would have told one of the employees his name, they would have been able to point out which one he had put up. Needless to say, we were quite surprised. I had never even heard of this place before, and we ended up picking out her engagement ring there. TLDR, picked out my fiance's engagement ring at a place my great grandfather went to so much they still know his name there, and did not know about it at the time. I was in junior high and this girl I talked to, our parents were friends, rode the same bus I did. I got on the bus one day, and in my brilliance as a socially awkward kid, I told her that I put a spell on her, and made some quite convincing hand movements and facial twinges. Ugh, she said, and sat down in her seat ignoring me. The next day she gets on the bus in much of the same way. I asked her how her day was, and, as I randomly pulled something out of thin air, asked her if the curse I had put on her had worked. "Did you hurt your hands at all?" Her face went pale. She took her hand out of her jacket pocket to reveal 3 fingers taped up. She told me she had slammed them in her locker that day. I was just as surprised as she was, but of course, I didn't let her know that. She told her parents that I had cursed her, and consequently, mine heard about it all as well. Never again have I ever felt that lucky at a guess. After a class in my undergrad, I was approached by a girl who'd noticed my t-shirt. It was a shirt for a summer camp I guided whitewater canoe trips for, and it was fairly well known in the camp community. She was wearing a t-shirt from her camp, also very well known. We introduced ourselves and became acquaintances. There's more. The following summer I was at a river doing the annual training with our guides, when she, let's call her Mary, walks up, seemingly out of nowhere. Strange for us to run into each other here, in the wilderness. She was there doing a course to upgrade her whitewater certification. This is in mid-April or so. In casual conversation I introduce her to a friend of mine, who was to be one of 3 guides on a trip we were to lead that summer. There's more. That summer, the 3 of us guys, with our 9 campers, paddled from Western Ontario, Canada, near the border of Manitoba all the way across the province, 750 kilometers over 25 days, on a river called the Etobicoke, which ends in James Bay. We had to take a train for over 24 hours from a couple hours north of Toronto to get to the start, and after all that paddling, we had to fly south to where we could catch a train to a place where there were roads again, so we could drive back to camp. We are sitting in the town where the train leaves, Moosonee, just watching this other trip get in from a river called the Mississippi. This river starts over 800 kilometers away from where we started. It flows from the south and they paddled right into the town we were in. We see some kids portage, carry their stuff, over the hill toward us, and we notice they are using wanigans. Wanigans are an old Voyager style of packing things that amounts to putting all your sheet in wooden boxes and carrying it with tump straps, a strap that goes over your forehead. We speculate idly on which camp that might be, using wanigans. Other than us, we couldn't think of many that did. I guessed one camp, and Mackie, my fellow guide, said I don't think I know anyone from there. I said yes you do, you know Mary. Mary? Yes, Mary. I always run into her. I randomly ran into her at training this last spring. You don't remember? Oh. Faintly recalling, I think. That girl. I point at Mary, the next girl to portage a canoe over the hill. Needless to say we were shocked and overjoyed to have someone to talk to on the long ride home about our experiences that wasn't part of the small cult that inevitably forms on long trips like this. There's more. The next summer, I decide to take a whitewater rescue technician course to keep me current, pun intended, for trips for the next few years. Mary is the first person to walk out of a cabin as soon as I pull up. She's doing a bit of work on the side for the company. Of course. There's more. About 4 years later, I found myself in Mongolia. I was at the end of 10 months of traveling and hadn't seen anyone I knew without planning it first. I'd lived in New Zealand, Vietnam, and after catching a case of typhoid fever, separate story, needed to head home with my newfound low budget, but not before one last adventure. The plan was to do a 20-day, self-guided horse trek with a friend I'd met up with. We were both canoe guides at the same camp in Canada, So we figured we could hack this trip if we treated it like a canoe trip with horses. It worked out. A couple days before heading out into the steppes to start preparing, we were running around Ulaanbaatar, the capital, looking around and finding gear we hadn't brought with us. We were the only white people around as far as we could see that day. Walking along, talking with my friend, another white face caught my eye walking the other way. At this point I'd been in Asia half a year and forgot I was white until I looked at my hands, or in the mirror, and regarded Westerners with the same intrigue the locals did. As the other face passed me in the crowd we locked eyes, and after 3 steps I froze in my tracks as recognition kicked in. I turned back to see her staring at me. "Mary, what the fuck are you doing here?" We hugged. She told me she had just finished a 20-day canoe trip through the steppes and we should come see the pictures. She took us back to her place. She had rented an apt with a bunch of other Canadians who all looked bewildered that she'd fished a couple more out of the maelstrom. We caught up over trip pictures and bid each other good luck till the next encounter. Who knows where the fuck that will be. TLDR, I keep running into the same chick over and over again, always in the most remote places. My ex and I went next door to meet some new people and their friends. We all decided to play Cranium and had a maximum of 4 teams. For whatever reason, we were on a roll, just annihilating everyone. One of the censor sketches comes up. For those of you who don't know, a censor sketch is essentially Pictionary, except you have to close your eyes as well. Typically these are easier words such as face or turtle, since there's the added handicap of, not being able to see what you're actually drawing. Anyway, it was a group censor sketch, so 4 people were drawing, with their eyes closed, to each of the respective partners. The first person to guess got an extra turn, or something. I and the 3 other people look at the word. We all look at each other thinking, how the hell is anyone ever going to get this word? We close our eyes. Someone says, "Go." I put my pencil down on the paper and move it about 2 centimeters straight to the right before my ex goes evolution. Myself and the other people drawing stop. My ex and I start dancing around like jubilant as holes, move up a million spaces, get the extra turn, and won in what was essentially a no-hitter in Cranium. Fantastically wonderful. But for anyone who likes to lose themselves in Nerdville, or simply resides there permanently, let me say that the wonder of probability is that doing something highly improbable is as wrong as eating string cheese. That is, it is no big deal. All probability says is that, generally, an event takes place once in insert number here. Generally is the key. In fact, transistors provide an example of electron tunneling, which is the improbable event in which an electron tunnels through a solid despite the fact that classical physics says it ain't happening 100% of the time, because the particle does not have enough energy to penetrate. The probability, via quantum mechanics, says that the probability is never zero as a consequence of the wave-like character of all particles. Literally, all particles, including your personal particles. There is some non-zero probability, though it is wicked small, but not zero, that while you read this, you will fall through floor. Seriously, not enough time has passed since the beginning of the universe for us to say that such an event is likely to have taken place even once yet. One way to ensure that you see the event is to run a test many times. That is, keep rolling a die and you'll get a 6. Another way is to get lucky, as in the case of dude randomly saying numbers and they matched his friend's pin. If you want more one-wave particle duality and you want your brain gently, sweetly faked, look up quantum entanglement. Some dudes are making amazing things happen in science this very month. This one actually worked against me, which is a shame but good nonetheless. I was at a friend's house, and we had just been playing poker. I was feeling in the gambling mood, so I picked up a dice and began rolling it and trying to guess the number it would land on. My buddy said, "Hey, if you guess what the number is, I'll buy you a pizza." A full goddamn pizza. All I had to do was guess right 1 in 6 right. Well, I didn't get it. I convinced him to let me try again, and again, and again, but to no avail. I began to bet things I had on me. Pence, guitar picks, etc. But every time I called the wrong number and did not win a pizza. I must have rolled for the pizza 30 times. He decides he doesn't want to bet anymore because I lost, and whatever, that's fair. When it gets time for us to leave, there are 6 of us, and only 5 spots in the car. Oh shit, someone has to ride trunk. It was about a 30-minute drive too, so we decide we all will call a number on the dice, and whoever it lands on rides trunk. We all call numbers. I pick 3, and I'm holding the die. I give her a good toss, and it bounces on the table. All of us, dead silent. My blood pressure, skyrocketing from the sheer intensity. The dice finally lands right side up. It's a 3. So, out of 30 chances to win a free goddamn pizza, and 1 chance to have to ride shitty trunk, I faking lost sheet hit the fan. One of the most surreal moments of my life. My friend, we'll call him Ricky, comes over to hang out. We end up on my computer looking for games to play, 5th grade. On a whim, we decide to browse the games on what I believe was games.com or some similar genetic website. He clicks on a random game, out of thousands, clicks on a random instance of that game, out of hundreds, and clicks on a random username, out of the 4 or 5 playing that game at the time. He sent the message, "Would you like to touch my penis?" I know, but it's 5th grade, so give a break, and the response we receive, after giggling our ass off is, "Ricky?" Now of course we are freaking the fuck out at this point and exit out / turn off the computer / unplug it / burn my house to the ground. The next day in school a friend of ours asks us if we sent that message. Holy shit, I respond, we did. Was it our username that tipped you off? Nope. Our friend says it just seemed like something you would say, so all on a series of whims, we hang out, go on the computer, check out that website, pick that game, select that instance of the game, click a random username, and send an arbitrary dick message to a random internet stranger who we are best friends with. Oh, I got one. I was about 7 years old and was visiting our neighbors across the street with my 2 brothers. Bubble Bobble was all the rage back then, at least for us, so we would play it incessantly. As prepubescent boys, we were always trying to one-up each other. Well, we inevitably ended up on the conversation of who made it the farthest in Bubble Bobble. I remember distinctly that there were passwords for each level, so you could continue your progress. My brothers each claimed they had gotten to level 50 or some such, I don't recall, and so I attempted to one-up them by stating that I had unlocked a secret part of the game that was beyond levels. My brothers both laughed at me and then, of course, told me to prove it. I, of course, was completely lying through my teeth. So, my oldest brother takes the controller in his hands and goes to the password screen and proceeds to ask me for the letter combination. I figured I would just shrug and say that I didn't remember the password when it didn't work. It's all A's to begin with, so I took that as my cue to follow an alphabetical route. A, B, C, D, I said. My brother waited. A, B, C, D, yeah, right. So, what's the final letter? E. No. I shouted back. It's D, yeah, A, B, C, D, D. He punched it in and pressed start. Suddenly, to all of our amazement, mine included, it unlocked Super Bubble Bobble. We stood in utter shock when the word super was added just before the name of the game with a ring-a-ling-a-linga. My brother pressed 1P start and immediately had his very first ejaculation. Disclaimer, I just tested the password on Nezoid on my Android phone. It still works. TLDR, tried ABCDD as a bullshit password to impress my friends with my Bubble Bobble knowledge, and it worked better than I ever could have imagined. I once posted in a 4chan get thread. If you don't know a get thread is, every post on a chan image board has a number to identify it, a long number, for instance 6 or 7 digits long. Look at the top right of any 4chan screenshot, you will see a number there. It's sequential and identifies that post as unique. A common thing was to post get threads. For instance 66 get names my cat. You posted your comment with your suggested name, for instance Cunty Bojangles. If the stars aligned and the numbers at the end of your posting matched the ops requested, get for instance 514,566 would win the get. You won and he would supposedly name his cat Cunty Bojangles. Anyway, I can't remember the context of this get thread, but it was a 000 get. I posted a derivative of the popular 4chan character Epic Fail Guy, wearing a Che Guevara bandana and speaking Spanish. I know he wasn't Spanish. It won the 00 get, which was pretty funny. A lot of people found it amusing, and it was the first time I had ever won the get, so I celebrated my victory by posting again another version of the Che Guevara brand of Epic Fail Guy in a different pose. I don't know how, whether by some dark magic or the gods simply willed it so, but that post ended with 000 as well. 2 zeros, in the same thread, with images of the same character, EFG in a Che Guevara bandana. The thread exploded into a shitstorm, some simply mashing their keyboards in excited derangement, others throwing wild accusations of mod involvement. However, I knew the truth. I had posted it, and had beaten the odds which more or less lined up with those of this thread on Reddit. Will probably get buried, but here goes. So in my freshman year in college, me and a few friends from my dorm floor decide to play the board game Clue. I've never played many board games, let alone Clue, but I agreed to play because I couldn't find anything else to do. I've never played Clue, as I mentioned, so there was a little explanation involved after we sat around the table. So the game began, and if I remember correctly, when you enter a room you are allowed to guess who the killer was, in what room, and with what weapon. The turns went all the way around the table, and then back to me, where I rolled enough to be the first to get into a room. I can't remember which room though. So I had the first guess in the game, so I picked the killer, the weapon and the place of murder. I wish I can remember the 3 I picked. I think it was Professor Plum with a rope in the library. Everybody looks at their cards one by one, and one by one they all shake their heads. We all think there's gotta be a mistake, until we open up the envelope to discover I had nailed it on the first guess of the game. I went insane. The chances of this happening are so slim. If I hadn't sat where I sat at the table, picked the token I picked, the dice rolling the right amount for me, and from my friends, and then picking from a huge combination of choices, there's almost no way it should have happened, but it did. We played another game, after I stopped freaking out. Me and all of my friends were playing Catchphrase, the game where it's basically hot potato with teams, and guessing random objects. We were passing the game around normal, when my teammate gets the machine, before he says a word. As soon as he presses the button I say the first word that pops into my head, trying to be funny. Nats actually just looked at me stunned when she showed the rest of us. I guessed it. We all freaked out. There are thousands of words programmed into that box and I perfectly guessed one. Best moment of my life edit. I just remembered my other greatest moment. Me and my 2 roommates were sitting on the couch one night chillin'. My roomie starts shuffling a deck and asked me to name the top card, and my other roommate Tree to name the bottom card. We did this for about 10 minutes with neither of us guessing correctly. My roommate asks Tree what the top card is. He instantly replied, 3 of diamonds. He was correct, and we started to celebrate. Out of nowhere while we were celebrating, my roomie looks at me and says, bottom card? I look Tree square in the eye and say 9 of clubs. We all freaked out because it was correct. Me and Tree promptly quit the game because there is no point in ruining perfect luck. My buddy and I met up at Taco Bell, and then we went to check out a porn store. We still both had soft drinks from eating at TB. When he went to drop me off again, he pulled his driver door up super close to mine, and he put my drink cup on my side mirror. In retaliation, I left his car door open and ran over to my car. Had to run around the back of his car, and I grabbed the drink. As I'm running, he's peeling out. Had some kinda BMW at the time, so actually kinda fast, and I sidearm. I'm right-handed, so take it to the left and whip it to the right, kinda sidearm. Throw it right at his car. I have horrible aim, so it kinda went in front of his car. Moments later he screeches to a halt, opens his door, and literally, I mean it, falls out onto the ground laughing. I thought he was hurt. Turns out that while he was peeling out, the drink rolled across the windshield, and as the door was closing, pushed the drink inside the car and set it on the passenger seat. Perfect. I had a few other crazy cases. We came to know Crazy Tosses and the like as Jekrum Throwswell, my real name. Another involving TB cup and car. We were cruising down a 25 miles per hour road, and I decide I'd toss the cup up into the air and forward out the passenger window. landed on the hood of the car, and it sat there. Another time did it with a tennis ball. I can't prove any of this, but I did also kick a volleyball diagonally across a basketball court and get all net. My absolute all-time favorite though, my best friends and I, middle school aged, playing Heraclix at one of their houses. We were of the age that we thought calling someone gay was a cool way of saying they aren't cool. I got called gay a lot. So in the game of Heraclix, you roll 2d6s while attacking with your superhero Judas. After the game, my friend Shane turns to me and says, "Joe, you're gay," and of course I say, "No, I'm not." So he grabs the dice. His cousin is there laughing the whole time, as is my other friend Mike. And he hands them to me. If you roll a critical hit, 2 6s, without probability control, the ability to reroll. We actually did talk like this. I will never ever again call you gay, and neither will Mike. You agree, Mike? Yup, well, I'm up in arms about it. I don't wanna risk this, cause if I lose I'll never hear the end of this. Eventually they talk me into it. It's just one roll. I roll. Double faking 6s. Shane, I think we need a reroll. Everyone else goes wild. They still called me gay. After lunch breaks at my school, we end up waiting in the hallway for a teacher to come and open the door to our homeroom. Anyway, me and my friend got up to the door, and there were a lot of people standing outside of it because it was locked. So I kinda tapped my friend on the shoulder and went, "Watch this." I hovered my hand over the door, and just then, a teacher opened it up from the other side. She must have been in the class for a while, but I guess she just didn't open it until then. I gave my friend a nod and proceeded to walk in. I'm honestly surprised as to how suavely I handled it, cause I was in shock too. Oh, and this one happened to a friend of mine. There was a power outage in our end of the city, and since it was pretty late at night, there wasn't much to do. So he was sitting in his kitchen eating a bowl of cereal, and he thought to himself, if I raise my hands, the power will come on. So, he raised his hands up, the lights came back on in the city for a second or so, and then the power went back off. I actually know what point that happened to, cause there was a second of power for me at my house too, and my dad who was driving at the time. The street lights flashed on and off. Not me, but my friend. We'll call him Nick. Nick plays these arcade dance games. One day in 2005 he was invited to the house of someone who helped develop a game called In the Groove. The second version of ITG2, being the creative bastards they are, was just released, and it wasn't fully unlocked yet. The unlock codes get released with time, and there were 2 more, until it was fully unlocked. So Nick is playing ITG2 at the developer's house with him, and Nick glances at the developer screen and sees some text. Vertex to unlock code XXXXXXXX, and he sees the first several commands of the code. He burns them to his memory. He goes home and writes a script to generate the remaining possibilities of the code. Another 7 characters with 4 possible entries. It meant there was 2,401 possibilities. He prints the document out. It's the size of a decent manual. He goes to the arcade the next day with his friend. We'll call him Mike. He and Mike start up a round. Mike says, "Which one do you want to try first?" Nick opens up the packet and points to a random sequence and says, "This looks as good as any." They get the code on the first shot. While I was in high school, me and a couple of my friends were getting our stuff put into our lockers to go to lunch. Well, I had just finished drinking a Coke/water, don't remember, and I was looking for a garbage can to throw it in. I see one, but it is around 25 feet from where I stood. So I turn to my friends and ask them, "What would you guys do if I get this in?" They looked at me, and then the garbage can. Mind you, this garbage can was mounted to the wall and the opening was perpendicular to the floor. One buddy says, "I'll let you drive my truck around school for a week," and my other friend says, "You are Jesus." Now this might seem like an easy thing, but trust me, from how far I stood away and the way the garbage can opened, this was like a 1 in a 10,000 shot. I either garbage, aim, and I throw my bottle. As soon as it left my hand I knew this thing was going to be very close. Since I was standing ajar from the garbage I had to put a little put of an arc in my throw, so in midair the bottle is spinning like a curveball towards the can. The bottle hits the edge of the opening, hits the other edge and bounces in. Well, me and my friends go apeshit and everyone in the hall is looking at me in awe. I felt like a god for just a moment. Two teachers run out of their classrooms asking what the hell we are screaming about, thinking a fight had started as everyone in the hallway was screaming. We all look at them and in unison say nothing. Then we went for lunch. TLDR, threw a bottle into a garbage can, which seemed impossible, and it went in somehow. When I was a kid, I faking loved the Guinness Book of World Records. I have no idea why. I just had a massive pre-boner for trivia. On long car trips, I would read that year's latest edition for hours and interrupt conversations every 5 minutes with new fun facts for everybody. One night when I was 8 or 9, my parents were having a dinner party and all the adults were playing Trivial Pursuit while I and the other kids were playing games, probably Mario Kart. I happened to overhear one of the questions while I was waiting for my turn to play. It was something along the lines of, what happened at 5:14 p.m. on November 9th, 1965? Disclaimer, I totally just had to Google the date, and I have zero recollection of what the actual time was. All of the adults, all pretty faking intelligent people, mostly at least bilingual, with master's degrees, top secret clearances and jobs at the Pentagon and whatnot, were completely flummoxed. I had vaguely remembered reading the year in one of my record books, and it seemed like a weird year, because I never remembered anything else happening that year. Not the moon landing, not Kennedy, not anything civil rights movement related, that I could think of. So, after they'd all given up, they were about to ask the lady with the card what the answer was, when I walked by the table on my way to the kitchen to get some more juice, and I said, it was the biggest blackout in history, and kept walking. They all looked at the lady with the card, who said, the lights went out. Pretty sure that created a really overinflated sense of pride in me for my parents until high school, when my academic performance confirmed without question that it was, in fact, just a fluke. I had a small fender bender while driving home from the beach one night. I was coming to a stop sign, and I stopped just a little too short and bumped this guy's bumper, very lightly, but still enough to feel solid. Also, I always stop far back where I can easily see the back tires touch the road. You see, I was tired and had passed out at the wheel just before I was about to stop the car and rolled into the guy. Anyways, this guy gets out of the car and starts flipping out, waving his hands all over the place, and so does his wife. They are both waving their arms all over the place, looking very pissed, and I feel so bad. But neither of them is making a sound, just motioning a lot. The guy inspects the damage and looks at me and points, then he claps his hands and makes a washing motion with his hands. I ask him if he is sure. I offer my insurance info and everything. He makes a motion that it is okay. We go our separate ways. That evening my friends and I decide to go to Dave & Buster's, an arcade. We never go to arcades, ever. But we figured, let's go check this place out. When we get there, there is a type of convention for the deaf going on, and guess who is there? The guy I hit and his wife. I approach him while he is chatting with other people and tap him on the shoulder. He turns around and is so excited to see me. He shakes my hand, hugs me, introduces me to a few people, appears to be explaining that I'm the one who hit him, and I see the realization in people's eyes. He then introduces me to his hot daughter. This was a day that I remember as having superhuman aim. It was PE class in high school. I was a senior at the time, and I was messing around with a group of freshmen while the entire class waited outside in the sweltering heat for the teacher to show up. We were kicking around rocks and had managed to find a tennis ball to entertain ourselves with, so naturally, we decided to start throwing things. It started out with us tossing rocks at random schoolyard objects and debris. First, we tried to make baskets with our rock on the backboard across the court. A couple kids tried, airballed it or missed the hoop completely, with a couple hitting the backboard. I tossed mine, and it was a perfect swoosh. Next up was a Gatorade bottle standing about 40 yards away. That's pretty far. You really had to throw your rock in order for it to even land near the bottle. Everyone fails miserably, while I step up and toss my rock and peg the bottle perfectly in the middle, knocking it down. The freshmen started giving me funny looks. But next up was the cherry on top. We pick up the tennis ball and look around for something to hit. I see that in a concrete wall 10 feet away from us is a hole at most a few millimeters larger than the size of the tennis ball. I point to it and suggest that we try and toss the ball into the hole. Of course, everyone fails. Even I with my string of luck expected to miss badly. But of course, I step up and proceed to casually toss the tennis ball into the hole practically no larger than the ball itself, getting stuck with an audible pop. The looks on everyone's face said it all. I could hardly believe it myself, but of course I played it off, as if it would surely happen. From that day on, I was known as the kid with crazy aim. I have another post floating around on here, but reading these reminded me of another amazing, odds-defying story. I grew up in a house, in a neighborhood with lots of other houses. My house wasn't the tallest, and it was surrounded by a bunch of similar houses. One time, late at night, there was a very big thunderstorm. The rain was pouring heavily, and the thunder was so loud I couldn't fall asleep. I remember one especially bright strike of lightning, which was followed almost immediately by a loud crash of thunder and my doorbell ringing. My initial thought was, who would ring our doorbell at such an hour? However, as I thought about it more, I came to the conclusion that lightning had struck my doorbell. That was the only explanation given the timing of the doorbell following the lightning. Sure enough, the next morning, I went on our front porch to check the doorbell and there was a perfectly circular hole with roughish edges, a couple millimeters in diameter, right in the middle of the button. As an aside, I tested the doorbell, and it still worked. Fast forward a few months. My parents had replaced the broken doorbell button a few weeks after it had been broken. There was another thunderstorm one night, and the lightning and thunder were keeping me up. There was one especially bright flash of lightning, which was followed immediately by a loud clap of thunder and my doorbell again. Yup, lightning had struck it again. I checked the doorbell button the next morning, and sure enough, there was another hole in the button, this one a bit bigger. But it was quite circular and smack dab in the middle of the button. TLDR, lightning struck my doorbell, twice. This will probably not be seen, but what the heck. When I was in HS there was a kid there with autism, can't remember his name now. He walked around pulling on his earlobe all the time. All the teachers liked him and treated him nicely. He would just walk the halls sometimes and walk into a class, and a teacher might stop the class and talk to him or introduce him to the class, etc. One of the reasons everyone liked him was this thing he could do. Anyone, and I mean anyone, student, teacher, whatever, who had never met him could walk up to him and say, "Hi, can you tell me my birthday?" 90% chance he would get it right, month, day and year, first try. He had off days, and after he did maybe half a dozen or so he would seem to get tired and start slipping, maybe hitting the month and year or month and day only, and then he was done for a while. Also, when we were dating my wife mentioned going into a gas station about 90 miles from town one day and seeing a kid there. He was about 12, looked a lot like me, and she said something about him seemed unusual and familiar. That is, he seemed like me, looks, mannerisms, attitude, everything. He walked right up to her, never met before, and started talking like they already knew each other. He had the same interests as me, talked like me, and had virtually the exact same name, a couple letters different in the first name, everything else identical. He then asked her on a date. Remember, he was 12, she was triple that. Yes, her eyes were saucer-sized at this point. She tried to be polite to him but said no, bought her items, and left. 6 months later, same gas station, the same kid walks up to her and says, "Hi, remember me? Want to go out? What the hell?" 2 stories for you guys, both involving my friend, known as Cheap Puds or the Puds he likes skating, Tory Pudwill, etc. First one, we were in the hallways at school just messing around when one of my friends pulls out a coin and says call it. 2 of my friends guess heads and tails and they look at T-Puds who, with the Paul Rodriguez grin, also a famous skater, on his face, says on its side. The coin is tossed in the air, it smacks onto the floor, and begins to spin, and spin, and spin. This went on for a good 30 seconds, before it slowed down and stopped, on its side. We erupted in laughter, and could not believe this had happened. Other kids were walking by us, and we made a circle around the coin, to defend it from being knocked over while we screamed our heads off until a teacher told us to be quiet. The second amazing moment again involves Cheapwoods, which is pretty funny because despite these lucky moments, he's one of the most unluckiest kids I have ever met. One of my friends made a little game out of trying to toss whiteboard expo markers onto the cell at the bottom of the whiteboard. So he's doing this one day during lunch and faking up a lot, and then in comes Cheapwoods with his fast food, picks up a marker from across the room, turns around, and throws it backwards. And of course, it lands perfectly. There was more screaming to be had as we hugged him. I've had many times throughout my life where I would have a ridiculously fast reaction time to things that almost anyone else would have been blown away by. For example, oftentimes people in my elementary school would be like think fast and then throw something, usually slow enough that someone actually could react, but I remember my friend was one of those jerks that would actually throw something at you really fast before even finishing the phrase. Once he threw a pencil at me as hard as he could from a few feet away, and I immediately moved to the side and caught it. Another time, freshman in high school, we were walking back into the school from playing kickball outside during a fired class. My friend was a bit behind me and to the left, playing with the kickball, when suddenly he chucked the thing at the guy only about a foot or two in front of me. They were friends, just playing around, and the ball bounced off his back, and within the half second I had to notice it. I reached up and caught the ball. The entire gym class stopped in awe, and I felt really awesome after that. Also, recurrently things like the first incident have happened with other things too, like small erasers and such. I'm not sure if I just randomly have amazing reaction times throughout my life, but I'm more often than not a pretty slow person when it comes to things coming at me. Maybe it's just the video games. I can't say that I have ever guessed anything like that. I do believe that the universe has a tendency to answer me rather quickly. My 3 most memorable, but not the only, I had just broken things off with an abusive jerk 3 months before. During our relationship I had always left my PS2 at his house. I had some friends over, and we decided to play some DDR. This was the first time I had touched it since our breakup. Pop open the tray, and there is his favorite movie. I pick it up, and laugh to my friends I'll never speak to that jerk again, but at least I got his favorite movie. My phone rings, and it's him. He didn't ask about the movie, but he did want to know if I had bashed in the hood of his car and slashed his tires. He also wanted to know if we were still in a relationship after not talking for 3 months. I think he was drunk too. Total drunk dial. The next I was running late to an Aerosmith/ZZ Top concert in Houston a couple of years ago. I had no clue where I was going, and in the process got lost. I spent a lot on that ticket and I didn't want to miss a minute. I finally find my way to the Woodlands, and I'm outside the gate, in my car, about 10 minutes to showtime, no clue where to park. I go up the street and turn around to go in the other direction when right in front of me a sub pulls out, almost like it was meant to be. I slide in. Got to my seat in the 8th row before it started. When the concert was over some people asked me what time I got there to get such great parking. I had to tell the truth. The other was today. I'm not a person to get sick. I mostly can't because of my job as a cook, but I also hate feeling sick. I'm usually pretty good about killing the problem when it starts, when I'm at home with my arsenal. I just got back from vacation yesterday, and I caught a nasty cold. After a couple of days sick, and then air travel, I was wiped out. All I wanted to eat was some soup. I mentioned to my roommate that, since it's 95 here in Texas, I can't think of or imagine anyone selling soup that I could just buy without all the trouble. Today, I needed more meds, so I'm walking out to my car to go to the store. A guy with a handful of menus is passing by. First human contact of the day. Would you like some free soup? Yay. I look at the menu and it's a 5-minute walk from my place. They have broccoli cheese. I'm feeling better, just in case you were wondering. TLDR universe helps me out sometimes. Karma for my ex. VIP parking. Free soup. I was in a physics lab, and we had this long intricate experiment to set up, and a ton of data to collect for one specific lab. It was expected to take the majority/all of the 3-hour block. Unfortunately, this happened to be a day where I was sick, but because the professor had an attendance policy I dragged my ass to lab anyways. I got there and looked at my lab group, and we looked like the most pathetic group at that very moment. Every single one of us was sick, but we all wanted to pass the course, so we soaked it up, quarantined ourselves in the corner, and started working on the lab. Now, this specific lab had an online portion. You record some data, input it into a program. The program will decide if your answers are reasonable or not, and then you can move on to the next part. So, my group is looking at this setup, and we all realize that we really don't want to do it. So we look at each other, collectively nope, and decide to try to BS the answers. There's no penalty for being wrong, so why not? We start scrolling through the open parts and just start making up values 0.28, 1.4, 0.19 and just go through every open blank and put something there. We do this for about 17/24 blanks and then click submit. Every single one is marked correct. We all kind of stared at each other for a second and then decided to roll with it. We used the values that were marked correct to guess the others. Got 100, and we were out in under 30 minutes. Tar thought the entire thing was hilarious. I've got two. Once, in high school, my friend Kenneth did the whole pick a card, any card thing as he found out a deck of cards. For whatever reason, I say I'll take the 8 of spades. As I reach out to pull a card, I pull the card to turn it up, to see what it is, and then immediately drop it face up on my desk, so he can see. 8 of spades. My mom's side of the family used to be really big on watching Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy when I was growing up. One time while we were watching Wheel, they moved to the next puzzle and showed all the blank letters with Vanna White standing off to the side as Pat Sajak says the category is phrase. I think it was. Anyway, this was like 20 years ago, and it's a bonus round. I look at the blank letters for maybe a second or two, and before the first player even begins their turn, I say give me liberty, or give me death. Patrick Henry. The game commences with the players doing their thing, and maybe 4 minutes later one of the players says they'd like to solve the correct answer, give me liberty, or give me death. The bonus question, who said it? The bonus answer, Patrick Henry. Witnessed by my grandfather, now deceased, my mother, both of my aunts, and one of my cousins. In high school I was in gym class. We were playing softball. I was playing left outfield position. When we would switch sides we dropped the school gloves near the pitching mound. Now when I would run in I would hide my glove. This is because there wasn't enough of them for the entire outfield team. Playing as a left outfielder, it is one of the most vital positions to actually have a glove. So when I start to run back to pick up my glove, Sir Douche Nozzle has taken it, and I go with the reasonable approach and explain to him that I've been using that all game and I'm playing in the outfield and really need it. This guy was terrible at softball anyhow and had already dropped quite a few balls. Anyhow he basically tells me to fuck off, and I politely tell him he is an asshole and things went to hell after that. I don't succeed in getting my glove from him, so I decide the best course of action is spite. I've decided that, even if a ball comes towards me, I won't run towards it, nor will I catch it. I've decided we are gonna lose this match. Very first person at bat mashes the ball directly towards me. I'm standing there with my arms crossed on my chest, and I'm watching this ball sail towards me. My thoughts at this point are fuck, I hate that guy. This ball is really coming at me. Holy shit, it's going to hit me. I start to panic at this point, and this is all happening extremely quickly since I realize that this ball will quite literally almost hit me. So I casually extend my right arm and caught the ball without moving one step in my right hand gloveless, which actually didn't hurt at all. Now the troll coach shouts out, hey Sir Douche Nozzle, Tonzoffo catches better than you without a glove. It was one of my most memorable high school moments. A few years ago, I was out with a buddy of mine partying in an Adams Morgan bar called Narlands. I'm an average looking black man and I have never ever had a woman initiate a conversation or even look in my general direction. Not that I'm complaining. Anyways, I'm just dancing and having a super good time. I go to the bar to get me and my buddy another shot of Gija when this super pretty / hot mixed looking chick asked me to get her a shot. I get her a shot and promptly walk away to resume my dancing and jumping around. About 45 minutes later, I go back to the bar to get a cup of water and the same chick, still sitting at the bar, asks me when I didn't even stay to talk to her. At this point, I'm kind of confused because things like this don't happen to me. I told her I normally don't talk to chicks when I got out. I just like to dance and go home when the night is over. That's how I catch my fun. Anyway, we have a brief conversation. I find out she is a South African exchange student. She's relatively new in town and asked me if I could show her around sometime. She asks for my number, which I give, and I proceed to go back to dancing. Next morning, I get an unexpected call from her and we talk for about 2 hours. Fast forward to the next Saturday. She called me asking me to give her a ride to a friend's house who was throwing a party in Georgetown. I wasn't too thrilled to drive from Silver Spring to NWDC and then to Georgetown, but I say cool. I get to her house and I call her telling her I'm outside. She tells me to come inside the house. This doesn't make me happy as I want to get home early. I proceed to go in, and this chick was dressed in a loose-fitting top and a miniskirt. She invites me into her room and I can see a half-empty bottle of red wine and I could hear soft R&B music playing. Things start to happen, and before I know, we are grinding to Jadisi in her room. Before I can say Captain Jack Sparrow, she's naked and on top of me. Suffice to say it was a good night. We eventually fell out of touch, but this event was one that I know will never happen for me again. I felt lucky. One day there was a new radio station in town. They had advertised contests they had posted on their website. I was bored, ended up entering them all. About a week later I receive a phone call from a lady at the radio station. "You've won tickets to see Oasis." "Awesome," I say. "In Vegas." I'm like, "Vegas? Oh my god. Awesome." I had never been on a plane before, let alone all the way across the country to Las Vegas. It was only a day there. Fly out on Saturday morning, fly back on Sunday afternoon. I was elated though. About 6 months later another radio station in town was having contest. Text the word Vegas to win a VIP trip. I texted with the thought in the back of my mind that I wouldn't win. No one wins 2 trips. The following Monday my phone rings. It's 98 Rock. The gentleman on the other end of the line is telling me I had won a 5-day 4-night VIP trip to stay at the Palms and see Ludacris and Depeche Mode. I think he was expecting to hear more excitement on the other end of the line, but I was in disbelief. So I got to fly to Vegas again, with much more time for activities. To experiences I'll never forget. My friends say I have the best and worst luck out of anyone they know. I've also been hit by 2 cars and a carnival ride, but I'll save those stories for another day. TLDR won 2 trips to Vegas from 2 different radio stations within 6 months of each other. No one ever believes these were unrelated occurrences, but I'll tell it. I ran the Tough Mudder with a group of guys in town for a bachelor party. The plan afterwards was to get cleaned up, and then I'd meet up with them at the hotel, where they were all staying, so we could all head out for the nightlife. Most were from out of town or in town, but had families, and thus wanted to stay overnight in the hotel, but I have a house very nearby, so I just stayed at my place to save some money. I called my friend to join up with them, and he said cool. We are in Embassy Suites, room 492. That was very close to my place as I'd been told it was, so I headed over there, went up to the 4th floor, and found the room. The door had been left cracked open. It was shut on top of that lever/lock deal, so it wouldn't shut all the way, so I thought cool, they left the door open for me, since they're expecting me. I opened the door and walked in, and there were 2 naked women hanging out there. Nobody else. One was in front of the mirror getting dolled up, and the other was sitting on the couch playing on her phone. Again, both completely naked, and both hot. They both knew I had come in, but neither even bothered to look up, as though it was completely expected that a man would walk in that room. My first thought was I didn't realize it was that kind of bachelor party, since I know these guys well, and wasn't expecting that. My next thought was wait, where is everybody else? I stood there stunned for a second, and then just walked out into the hallway, and called my friend to ask where is everyone else? He said, "What do you mean? Room 492?" Like I said, Me, I just went in room 492 and no one is in there but two naked girls. Him, what? We're all sitting here right now. Are you sure you went to 492? I checked the room number again and it was absolutely room 492. I said, is this the right hotel? It turns out they were at the extended stay, not the embassy suites. Both were very close by, so there were no red flags. It was too far from my house. Both had similar names. I still never found out what was up with that room. When I got to dinner, not one of the 20 guys there believed me, except the guy on the phone. TLDR, what are the odds there would be two hotels both very close together with very similar names, and at the same room at the wrong hotel? Would have the door cracked open for a guest, and with naked women in it who were expecting a man, and my friend accidentally gave me the name of the wrong hotel to go to, and this was during a bachelor party, so it would seem somewhat plausible, and yet it was a totally unrelated thing. PS. Before you ask, no, I didn't head back into that room, even though I knew they were expecting a guy. Looking back on it, I'm really proud of myself. I didn't for a whole host of reasons. For one, I was married, and I don't roll that way. 2. What would happen when the guy or guys they were expecting showed up? What if they're some crime syndicate, or drug dealers, or who knows what else, and I'm in there with their women? Pretty happy about my choice. Many years ago, I believe 16 years old at the time. I had just broken up with my first girlfriend. I thought my life was over. I went outside of my house to take a walk, crying like my life was over. At the time I was so in love, at what I thought was true perfect love only a 16-year-old could have. I said to myself, I want to die today. So I started walking towards a very busy intersection down a few blocks from my house. Living in New York City at the time, I had plenty of cars to run me over and make it fast, I had thought. As I approached this particular intersection, it has 4 lanes / 4 lanes / 4 lanes / 4 lanes. I call it a 16-way intersection. On a busy Saturday I was crying, whimpering and ready to end it as I walked toward the intersection. I saw the speeding cars and remember thinking that my mother is going to be so upset with me. What a thing to think. I walked out into the street with my head down and my teeth clenched in anger and sadness. At that exact moment all traffic had stopped. Every direction had a red light and I simply walked across the street without any harm done. Nobody knew the difference. I've never told anyone. I figure that the chances of nobody turning on red, nobody driving and all lights turning red at the exact moment were very low odds. I use that mistake as a turning point in my childhood and my life. 25 years later I have 5 wonderful children and a beautiful wife who I'm thankful for. It was November 2003 and my 56-year-old dad was giddy. I never doubted my parents' love for each other. I have many memories of seeing them slow dance to bell-rubbing music in our kitchen. However, neither of them were particularly gift-wise on holidays. Valentine's Day might warrant the obligatory flowers, a birthday would be a catalyst for a card from the kids, but holidays, in their minds, never seemed cause for extravagant gift giving. So, we are all sitting around the kitchen table in early November, drinking coffee and sharing a crossword, when my dad looks at my mom and says, "You'll never in a million years guess what I got you for Christmas." His grin was huge. Of course, mom was taken aback for a few reasons, but mostly because since when did anyone in our family buy Christmas gifts before December 24th? You can guess, but you'll never get it right, he prodded. "You're on," was her reply. There's no way. We've never even discussed it before. You have no idea. So, mom asked for a piece of paper and a pen. She said she would write her guess down on the slip of paper, and without looking, dad would put the paper in his wallet. After she opened her present on Christmas Day, he'd read the slip of paper. What would the prize be for the winner of this bet? After 36 years of marriage, apparently bragging rights would suffice. So, she tore a piece of paper off the newspaper and scrawled 2 words on it. Dad placed it in his wallet, and that's where it stayed for the next month and a half or so, amid constant trash talking from both sides of my parental duo. Christmas morning arrives, and, by this time, we, including my brothers and sister, are all anxious for the great gift opening. Dad hands my mom a heavy wrapped box and dares her to open it. It may sound silly, but you could have cut the tension in the air with a butter knife. She opens it and begins laughing. She places the gift down and starts jumping around like a contestant on The Price is Right. My dad's face is one of disbelief and shock. We all shout, "What's in your wallet?" He pulls out his wallet, pulls a well-worn slip of newspaper from it, and reads, "Gumball Machine." And there it was, in my mom's 5th grade teacher script. Sitting on the floor next to her was a vintage gumball machine from an old Ford dealership, filled with brightly colored gumballs. I had never heard my mom talk about gumball machines. She didn't collect things. To everyone in the room, it was clear this gift was out of left field. "How did you know?" he asked. "I'm psychic," she replied. Sure, she probably saw his eBay history or stumbled upon the information in some even less interesting way, but that day she was psychic, and we had no reason to challenge her. My dad passed away the following May. That crumpled up slip of paper he kept in his wallet now sits in a clear glass Christmas ornament and has a place of honor on my mom's tree each Christmas. TLDR, my mom guessed her Christmas present and made my dad eat crow. I flew to New Orleans for a wedding in I think 2001. In the departure terminal there were these to Carolinagrads, and since our plane was delayed we had struck up a basketball conversation where I made fun of Coach Doherty. We board the plane, and it turns out they're sitting next to me. They're pretty obnoxious the whole flight, and I'm glad when we finally land. We go to the rehearsal dinner, which is extremely stuffy and hot, so at some time I walk outside to get some air, and as I step out of the door, the two guys step out of the adjacent door. It turns out they're also there for a wedding and are at a different rehearsal dinner at the same banquet hall. I think it's a funny coincidence, but I don't see them again that weekend and put it out of my mind. We get back into Raleigh, and as my luggage comes off the conveyor belt I notice the bag is ripped and one of the pockets I had locked, pre 9/11, was completely unzipped. As I start to quietly flip out, someone else says, "Hey, that's my bag," and I look up, and it's one of the Carolina dudes. We had the same exact luggage, which I had never seen another traveler besides myself using. It was crazy. My bag came out soon, and it was fine. Then when we go to claim our car from long-term parking, the Carolina guys are of course parked right next to us. I'm really terrible at darts. I was with my girlfriend at a bar in DC while in town visiting her friends, and there was a dartboard. We decide to play to kill some time while her other friends are mingling. She is pretty decent and I'm terrible. At one point I chug a bit of my beer and look her in the eyes and tell her, "Wouldn't it be funny if I was actually really good at this and was just letting you win so I could come back in the end and impress you?" I had a huge smile on my face and said to her, "Pick a number." She picks 18. I let the dart fly, and wacko, it hits 18. I play it off and think to myself, crap, that was sheer luck. The next 10 or so shots, I close out a few numbers all while she calls out what I should hit. I start having fun with it and have her blow the darts, throw the darts and turn around to kiss her without looking at where they land. Start throwing darts quickly without taking my time, etc etc etc. They all land. This was a few months ago. I think she is still convinced that I'm actually good at darts and I was messing with her. I have never been able to do any of that again. I mean, I tell ya, moral of this story, it's a 1/10,000 chance I would even have a girlfriend, and a 1/1,000,000 she would be with me for as long as she has been. It was July 4th. 2011 at approximately 1 AM. I was coming down from a pretty good mushroom trip with my brother and a friend of ours where we just sat around our fire pit and waxed poetic about the universe and how creepy mosquitoes are. After searching for something to listen to on my brother's laptop, we came across some videos of Michael Jackson's last live shows, and we were just stunned at his smooth yet savage skills. We speculated that he must have been an alien or a dancing reincarnation of the Buddha or something, and eventually we went back to the fire to pet our animals. I almost just typed "pet our animals" in Aho. We decided it was about that time and we went our separate ways for the night, but since I wasn't tired I decided to go lay on the trampoline and look at stars and stuff. I was thinking about MJ and replaying the night in my head while admiring the distant suns, and I had an idea. Maybe if I concentrate hard enough on a certain spot in the sky, I would see a shooting star. So I put my mind grapes to work and looked intently to a small patch of black in the night sky, and though in my head I will see a shooting star, in no more than 10 to 15 seconds a bright streak appeared exactly where I was looking, and it was then I knew. It was him. It was Michael Jackson. TLDR, summoned the ghost of Michael Jackson riding a shooting star with my eyeballs. I still can't believe this one. The very first time I was invited to one of my friend's places, he was showing me his customized Nike football boots, on which he had his girlfriend's name added. After showing me the first boot, I asked whether the same name was on the other boot, or whether there was something different on that one, for instance his own name, so he'd have Ben on one boot and Lisa on the other. He looked confused and asked why would I put something different on the other one. Well, you could put your own name, or some other girl's name, that'd be pretty funny as well. So you'd have Lisa on the one boot, and, I dunno, Sarah on the other one. At this, the whole room went silent. There were 5 of us, me, my mate, his girlfriend and another couple that they knew quite well. I thought to myself, oh well, not the best joke apparently. But after receiving a couple of stern looks from my mate's girlfriend, I asked what's up. They went on to explain that my mate had once cheated on his girlfriend with a girl named Sarah. Everyone in the room had known this apart from me. His girlfriend looked so pissed because she thought he had told me. We hadn't known each other that long yet, so that would have been inappropriate. So me suggesting to put his girlfriend's name on one boot and the name of the girl he cheated with on the other didn't go down so well. What were the chances of that? TLDR. Friend showed me boots with girlfriend's name on them. I said it would be pretty funny if he put some other girl's name on the other boot, and in the process unknowingly suggested the name of the girl he had cheated with.